This is the Modern Craftsman Podcast.
With who? Oh, Tyler Grace from TRG Home Concepts.
Nick Schiffer with NS Builders.
Johnny O'Haran, Vintage Builders.
And Adam Esparza from ALE Tile.
And Andrew Acker with Schluter-Systems.
So we are at IBS 2019. We're at the Schluter booth. This episode is sponsored by Schluter, booth number N1139.
I'm glad you knew that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And we got Adam from ALE Tile. Drove in 4 hours from Cali.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm loving it.
He did not drive his truck. If you guys follow his account, you'll know what we're talking about.
Unfortunately, I didn't.
And then we got Andrew from Schluter, North America. And your role, I want to dig into you. What is your role with Schluter?
I'm the Director of Education for Schluter-Systems in North America. So we do a lot of education, internal, of course, training, but we train all professionals, industry professionals, whether they install, specify, or sell our product. We do training for them, get them all up to speed on that. But our main focus is really the installer, the tradespeople.
Right.
Get them proficient with our system, understanding what the benefits and features are, how to do it, really how to put it in properly, what's the right way to go about doing that.
So you guys are usually setting that up with a vendor, or is that you guys have your own training?
We have our own training. We put on about 300 events last year in North America. They're free to the trades. We foot the bill for the food, the hotel rooms, all the material that's used. They get a lot of industry guidance and a lot of publications that they take with them for reference when they leave. They only have to get themselves there and back. Other than that, we take care of the whole thing.
Food too?
Even the food.
Can I bring my kids?
You can bring your kids.
Can you go more than once a week?
I see you're devising a plan here.
My kids eat a lot.
Same here. Especially when you have 4.
Oh no, 4.
That's crazy.
It's double as many as me.
Yeah.
Wow.
So what's involved? I mean, what's your intention with bringing all these people in and making sure? Is it a certification that they walk away with? Is it just ensuring that they know the ins and outs of your products?
Well, it's interesting. We started it we had a real idealistic approach to it. We certainly wanted to talk about our products because we're sponsoring the events. They're Schluter training. But when at the time I went to our CEO and I said, it's really important with all the new people coming up in the trades that they understand the trade that they have chosen as their profession. They need to appreciate the long, rich history of tile installation, which goes back thousands of years. And let's bring them up to speed and let them really get a good look at the profession they decided to go into.
Craft.
You know, it's I think it's important that they know that and have some background and appreciate that, and really understand where the industry is right now, what the do's and don'ts are. Many people didn't even understand that there was a group of people that meet a couple times a year to just discuss the nature of the industry, what the current situation is, what should be the standards. You know, manufacturers have to meet standards. Well, there should be standards in installation too.
I think it's important that you said, the trade. It's not, training them in the trade, not training them on a product. Like, yeah, obviously you guys are sponsoring it, but you're talking about the trade holistically. And you come from, you were a tile setter, correct?
I was a tile setter for 20 years in California, Northern California, Oakland, Berkeley, San Francisco Bay Area. 7 learning the trade from a fellow who was setting tile before I was born.
Wow.
So I learned the old mud method, which is great. I mean, you talk about a long, rich history of quality craftsmanship.
Bulletproof.
Right.
That's exactly bulletproof.
So when you found one, you take one apart.
Yeah.
Try to demo.
That's the way to discover how well it's put together is when you go to try to take it apart.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's where I started, and then I got my C54 license, which state of California requires a license. So I got my C54, and I
requires a license for tile install.
C54 would be ceramic tile.
Yeah.
I think, is it still pool tile too at this point?
Yeah.
Adam?
Yeah. But it's required.
You're good.
Yeah.
In California, so it's a big deal.
Yeah, so I did that for 13 years, and then I was recruited by Schluter to come on and help them represent their company and sell product.
Yeah.
And we do it through application. You just said that we're really not talking about product as much as we talk about applications, like a floor. What do you need your floor to do for you? What are the performances you need out of your floor besides the aesthetics? Mm-hmm. Let's start there. How about a shower? Now, that's a wet area. We're dealing with water now. What's important there? So they're always application-based training.
You said it before the podcast that anyone you ask is going to say that a mud bed is the best method. But and there's no one that very few people are going to contest that. But that's not obviously here you're not promoting a mud set bed. You're promoting a product that doesn't necessarily replace it, but helps kind of elevate. I guess we're talking about like a quality thing. So
bridge the gap, because I think you could say people will go along with the mud job just because they've heard it as like history. Not a lot of people have experienced or can set it. So how do you bridge that gap to still get the same type of quality from underlayment?
See, I think the important thing, even with your company, I know when I started setting tile in general, is even through your installation manual and the tolerances and the specs you have and deflection and subfloor requirements, which you said it's about the application. And I think that you guys do a good job of educating people. So many of these products that are out there today, you lose sight of the standard and the basics of tile setting and the principles and foundation of the work. And I think that you guys and your products, you still need to maintain those standards as far as subfloor deflection if it's with Ditra, flatness if it's with Ditra, and make sure that your subfloor is flat prior to installing it. And I think that you guys do a good job of advocating to keep and maintain those standards so that you're still getting something that, even with the Ditra, and the uncoupling, you still get something that's comparable to a mud bed, an unbonded mud bed, but maybe it lets you compete better with the other people in your price point.
Yeah, thank you. We do really want to focus on that there are standards, there are things that you need to have right, like floor flatness. I mean, the most popular tile on the market right now are 12 inches by 24 inch and 6 inches by 36 or 48 inches.
Right.
If your floor's not flat, you're going to have trouble getting that floor even.
Right.
So we do talk about that. It's right here in the Tile Council of North America Installation Handbook. What does your floor need to be as far as flat? Well, here's the standard. Right. Here's the specification you need to meet. So we do that. But you're right also when we think about mud bed in general. When I was in California, I set tile. And that was my world. And when I got on with Schluter, I was able to travel all around the country and into Canada. And I found that there isn't a whole lot of areas where mud work is still really prominent. California is one of them.
Right.
Northern California is much stronger than Southern California. You get around Chicago, New York, New Jersey, some areas, you find these little pockets that are still where mud work is still really strong. But the rest of the country, they were never exposed to it. Hardly anybody knows how to do it. So when you start looking at how much tile needs to be installed every year, and who the tradespeople are that are trying to install it, it's a small percentage of them that actually know how to do proper mortar floating. So what do we do? Where do we go from there? And that's where Schluter can come in and say, look, we can train you on these methods. They can be very efficient, so your business model is efficient, which means you can be competitive and make some money. You can feed those 4 kids, right? You got bills to pay. There's a certain amount of production that needs to be done. Unless you're doing really, really high-end work where you can charge for that type of work, that's a real luxury. But so many people in our trade don't have that luxury to do that kind of work. Who's going to just go do that 300-square-foot floor in somebody's house? Well, then you get to these people like, they just entered the trade, and there's nobody there to teach them how to do mud, and they really don't have any desire to learn how to do mud, I've learned. That kind of hurts me a bit, coming from where I come from, but still, it's kind of the nature of the business, and it's the predicament we're in. So when you look at a floor, what do you need out of a floor? What are you going to get? The whole uncoupling idea. Why is uncoupling important? Well, you can't bond dissimilar tile materials to each other because they're going to behave so differently. Somebody's going to lose.
Right.
Somebody's going to lose in that tug of war, and it's usually the tile. So, let's educate them on that. And what was the benefit, or one of the benefits of a mortar bed? It was that it uncoupled the tile assembly from the structure. Structure could move a little bit.
Right.
Didn't affect the tile veneer. Why? Because the mortar bed was there with a cleavage membrane. So it's those type of things that we certainly want to share with them, and then give them the opportunity to get into the trade and do good work.
Yeah. I think, like Tyler says, it's, reverse engineering, like understanding what you're, like, what you need to achieve. If it's a floor, if it's a wet area, and reverse engineering and figuring out the flatness, and and making sure that you're not just using a product because you believe in a product, but you're using a product because it's accomplishing something that makes sense. But Adam, you're strictly mud, right?
No, I'm not, and that's what a lot of people.
Well, your
think.
Instagram shows that.
Okay, well, it's showing that simply based on the fact that my clients are wanting it.
Yeah.
And
you're in Southern California?
I'm in Southern California.
Why would they want that? Like, a lot of people don't even realize what it is.
It's what they're wanting, and it's the builders that I work with, it's the designers that I work with that are requesting it, And so
That's awesome.
I'm always
that is really cool.
I'm always trying to, because I love seeing the new stuff that's coming out. I love learning it, and I love, I've been to all the Schluters that are in my area, and I want to use it. I've used it a couple times on a couple jobs, but just for the most part, they're wanting it to be a mud bed. So it is what it is.
So did you how did you get into tile?
So I'm a second generation tile contractor. My dad and my uncles were all in it. And, at a young age, I just picked it up, and it is a lost art. And a lot of people are always saying, like, how are you doing that? And, going to the fact that, I get so many people wanting to learn how to do it because they're seeing, like, the way I do it and the outcome.
I mean, you take a very artistic approach to tile, I think.
Yeah, I do.
And, you're so incredibly passionate, but, you're not seeing that. Like, you're seeing all these products out there or new ways to install tile, and you're like, and what I see at least is your social media shows the mud bed, and I'm genuinely interested. Tyler just did a big did a big mud set in that bathroom that you're working on.
Yep.
And that's super interesting to me because I've never done it.
Yeah.
I'm not a tile guy by any means. I've installed a lot of wrong tile before, but
Wrong tile.
Wrong
well, that's
tile.
what's funny is
Wrong underlay. Yes.
Put in wrong.
Yeah.
Wrongly.
Wrongly.
Yes.
Is that a word, John?
It's weird because
It is now.
and that's just it. Is like a lot of other mud guys that I talk to, a lot of the older generation are telling me, like, you're giving away trade secrets, and yada yada, right?
Right.
And,
we
and
hope.
stuff. Well, and that's just it. Is like I feel like the past few generations, it was such a secret, and they did, like, tile guys for some reason didn't want anybody to see what they were doing. And I don't even get it. It doesn't make sense.
That brings us to today, where all of this is lost because no one
all lost
talked
because
about it.
It seems like the tile guys were all so even the apprentice would have to go away or something and not see a certain way of.
I gotta mix this real quick. Go away for a second.
Yeah, just screeding and whatever. But now that with social media and everything's out in the open, I'm seeing this as no. We need to have the next generation know this stuff,
Yeah, it was okay to have secrets in your trade when that was the trade practice, right? The predominant method of installation was mud.
Yeah.
You could have your little secrets, and you didn't want to tell the competition. But I think now that we're a couple of generations out from that,
right,
it's important that the people that know how to do this craft pass it on. That's more important than keeping your secret, right?
I totally agree.
So there's where we are now.
Exactly.
I love what you're saying about that.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do now.
I think the most important part with that is these newer guys, younger guys and girls who are coming into this trade, they're walking into a product like Curdy or Ditra or foam panels, and they don't fully grasp
means and
whether
methods.
it's uncoupling or whether flat.
Exactly.
The new 6x36 tiles, as Andrew just discussed, there's leveling clips out now, which people are using the wrong way. They're
Yes.
supposed to be used if a tile is bowed, and now people aren't doing proper subfloor prep, which brings you back to mud floors. All of that prep is involved in a mud floor. If you understand the basics of why there's decoupling, there's flat, there's level if it's attainable, there's deflection. If you understand all of that, you can use a product like Ditra and do all of that prep, whether you're self-leveling prior to the Ditra, and then maybe the leveling clips give you a little bit of an advantage, but people are using them to make lippage-free floors that aren't flat.
And
you
hollow.
You just lost all of the principles of tiling. So
Yep.
again, going back to what Schluter's doing is like the education as far as, and what Adam's doing as to the basics of tile, I feel like are so lost with the newer systems, where it's just come in, plug and play. You know, you could watch a YouTube video on how to install some of these people's stuff, but it doesn't help you with the basics of tile.
Isn't that
you
being
know?
dictated by this generation, where they want to skip the whole apprentice program, and like you'd have to tile for 5 years or do the prep or just mix mud and just see what's going on? That doesn't exist now. I mean, from what I see, maybe it's my price point, maybe it's my market. I mean, I know it changes for both of us, Nick, where we have higher end jobs that, you know, you can put time into tile. But then there's other stuff where you're getting crews that are just kind of blazing along. And they all think that their value comes from how fast they do it.
Yeah.
And that they just want to fast forward to go into, hey, let's skip all that underlayment. Let's just get A, B, and C done so we can set tile. And there's kids out there that shouldn't be setting tile at all.
Right, and
They should just be mixing.
They're installing that tile so quick. They're skipping the important steps, and they're banking on the fact that I have a pretty good chance of it not failing in the lifetime of this house. So let's just run with it.
So, I mean, Adam, you're going to do a mud shower where you're going to screed all your walls. You're going to make sure that they're plumb, they're flat, and they're square, right?
Of course.
So if you're doing a pattern that's wrapping, the pattern wraps consistently, at that point, your prep saves you time on the install. Andrew, somebody's going to come in and use a tile, one of your foam boards that's going to go up. They need to realize, and you probably do a good job of educating them, that their framing now has to be plumb, square, and flat prior to installing this board, right?
You're right.
And that's what I think is lost with a lot of the newer systems, where these educational classes and trainings that they're putting out, that's where the focus needs to be. Not even, like you said, product education. It's just like the principles of why you're doing things. You know why you're doing them.
Well, this is the thing is, and I was listening to something you were saying earlier, whereas, you want your tile to be there when you're at studs, right?
Yep.
Because you want to know where that tile is going to end up at a certain point. You want to know where that niche is going to be for your tiles to come in. That's everything that I'm doing right there when it's all studs. I'm making sure that, oh, hey, this tile, if this back wall came out just another inch, I'm going to be able to make it to where it's going to end on this side for the soffit or whatever, anything. I mean, construction.
Yep.
Yeah,
There's always something, right? So the ability to be able to float out a wall, another inch, another 2 inches, to square it up. Maybe on one side I'm a half of an inch, and the other side I'm 2 inches, just to square something up. I'm able to do that just with that one day of prepping for my tile, And that's the thing that it's hard being a mud guy, I guess you would call me. To be able to use a lot of the Schluter-Systems out there right now, because it would take me just as long, if not longer, to shim out everything, to make sure everything is needing to be.
You're not a carpenter.
I'm not a carpenter. I'm a tile guy.
Yeah.
So it's really hard, but at the same time, I do understand. There's a shortage, and I'm seeing this like, okay, we need to get this out here so more people could understand and see what I'm even doing. Right?
Well, you're also getting rid of that. There's no excuses for you. So
Well, I think me
with
and
your
John-
product, the walls aren't flat. No walls are ever flat. But you know,
You're
if somebody's
not
coming
assuming
in, if somebody's coming in and installing a different product on the walls and walls, like, well, that's the framer's issue. How many
Well,
times
that's
you see
what John
trim
and I
guys?
run
It's the
into.
framer's issue. Like, no, it's your
I'm
issue
not-
because it's there now.
Yes.
So like, it is your issue, regardless of if you want to. So you're getting rid of that, you know. And again, that's the basics of tile setting and the importance of understanding that and getting that out there for everyone is going to make. I feel like it would make a difference in all tile jobs that you see.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
I'm speaking for myself, but I think John runs into it too. It's like I've had tile jobs completed, and then there's like a lippage issue, and it's like, well, the framing was off. And it's like, and then I'm like, all right, next time I need to make sure that the framing's not off because I got to start eliminating these excuses.
No, but you're supposed to have that conversation when you show up to the job, review everything, not when the tile's set and you're like, well, yeah, I knew the whole way through. This is it. Or you started with the clips on the outside wall instead of at the hardwood floors,
right?
And now there's a lip, and it's like, no, that's nothing. It's none of the techniques. It's just you,
right? And
it's
like
you and how you went into planning it, and how you didn't do it. You just showed up that day, told a guy, tile that room,
right?
And that's what we battle a lot of, is that when you say, hey, I want this mitered, I want that, and you come back and there's a Schluter edge in there, nothing against that product. It's just guys are going, hey, how can I speed this up? What can I get away with?
Right.
Because I don't want to sit back and it's really the tedious stuff.
That's right.
And how do you skip the line here?
And you're adding more trades, like Tyler said. You're not a carpenter if you're a tile setter. And for us, like I know, we try to, we're installing engineered stud in a tile wall because we're trying to take the extra step to make sure that we're eliminating the possibility of a twisted stud that's going to throw a foam panel off because we're not doing a mud screed wall. So it's like it's constantly, every time we do it, it's like that's like 98% now. Like next time we need to try to get 98 or 98.5 or 99% and just keep reverse engineering it. But there's so many more people involved where it's like going the old school mud way.
I mean, it's always been the nature of finish work is that you have to make your work perfect on top of other imperfect work. That's just, the electrician doesn't have this issue, right? The plumber doesn't have this issue. Their stuff is hidden. You just do it right, and it's right. And here we are coming with finish work, and it's got to get done right. So you're right, there are no excuses. That was the beauty of mortar bed, is that you can make it flat, plumb, level, square. You are in control of your substrate. And we gave that to another trade.
Right.
So we can't really blame the other trade. We just have to make it right.
Right.
One thing we actually do with our foam board, our Curdy board, is we show this in the workshop, is that we do what's called wet shimming, which is a line or bead of thin set that's placed on the stud, and then we place the Curdy board into the thin set when it's still nice and wet, and we use a really long level and push the board up against the studs, and we take out a lot of the bowing and the flexing and so forth out of the stud. The thin set's not there for adhesion. It's just there to shim it out and get it as straight as possible.
Are you holding off on fastening that at that point until it sets up?
Yeah, you're right, Tyler. We don't drive the fasteners all the way home. We put them in, hold the board in place, and then we let the thin set firm up for an hour or so. Then you can go ahead and drive this
the
through
stuff
home.
that just it makes all the difference
It
because
does.
now your tile set, sometimes there's guys, tile set, like drywall guys are hanging board in showers, and if they're, this is the stuff that's going to make the difference where if somebody knows that and they come in and now, see, your tile setter is now set up for success and not set up to make excuses. And you can get the same, close to this, for all intents and purposes, you can walk out with the same tile job with Adam's system or Andrew's system. It's dependent, you're going to put your time in up front with Adam's or kind of on the back end with Andrew's, and that's when it's especially important to have a very experienced tile setter.
I'm thinking that right now, you're talking about the thin set on the studs. There's 1,000 people that are listening to this episode, but never thought of that.
Isn't that amazing?
No, there's 1,000 guys going, I'm not getting paid for that.
Well, yeah, that too.
They're just like...
But if they're setting the tile, I bet you... No, for sure, but I guarantee if your tile setter is setting that tile, that they are getting paid for that because now it's saving them on the back end.
Because they're like, they're
But
trying
those
to
are the
rip
good guys.
studs down and all right, how do I shim this? How do I make it right? I'm just saying that's it. I guess where I'm going with this is that your role is education, and you said that you do 300 a year, that boggles my mind. but there's still this entire part of your industry that is still undereducated. Like, how do we get to that? How do you see us being able to educate the industry in
The
a
masses.
more broad fashion?
Well, I think it has to start with the people that we're going to educate. I think they have to understand that they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
I hate to say that, but there's a lot of people that come to our class that admit it and say, I'm new to this. I'm here to learn. And I heard that this is not just about Schluter, but there's a lot of like Tile 101 and 201 going on here. Are you going to cover that? Or like, do you see what's in front of you? You've got a National Tile Contractor Association installation guide book, and you've got the Tile Council of North America installation handbook in front of you. You have all of this literature here. These are all the standards. Here's all the tolerances. This is what's right, this is what's wrong, and this is why it's wrong to do it that way. Here's proper prep, and this is why you have to do proper prep, whether it's a water issue or a level issue or flatness. Yeah, we go into all of that stuff because we think that's important, but it has to start with the people accepting that they're not just good enough. We hear that, well, I can get that done. I'm good enough to, to make a living and get this done. It's like, oh man. And I want to take these young people aside, men and women, and say, when I started out in this trade, the highest on the food chain on the job site were the finish carpenter and the tile setter. And it just pains me to see that the tile setter is considered no better than a carpet layer these days. No offense to the carpet layers, but certainly it's like, man, there's a lot to tile and getting it right and understanding it. And then there's also understanding construction in general. You guys were talking about studs being out and, where is it boxed out properly for where the niche is going to be, or is it based on your layout, or did they just frame it into the wall and didn't even ask you? Or, you said tile should be on the job site way back when, so you can do, get a story pole, do some layout. Let's figure out where things are going to be, right? So I think even the tile trades have to appreciate all the other trades and know at least enough about them.
Absolutely.
So that they can work together.
Well, and that's another thing we're talking about California and getting your license. You have to have a signature from another tile contractor saying that person's been working for 5 years or 4 or something, which is interesting. It's like that says a lot about, it's a serious thing. You need to know what you're doing. I always recommend, people that are wanting to get into the trade, you need to be a helper for a long time. You can't just go in there and say, oh yeah, I think I got this. I could do this. I've set a backsplash before.
All day.
I'm going to knock it out. And it's like, no. Not when you're in an area where there's water, when it's a super crucial thing,
Well, we talked about this before we started, was that this is one of those things fundamentally that you do, and then tile can range from $4 a square foot to $50 a square foot or above. That if it is screwed up, that let's say I do think we're missing a little bit of this conversation where GCs need to be more available on the job site. Where like my sheetrock guy, if he finds studs that are out of whack, he just keeps the board off instead of just covering it. There's the mentality that there's so many builders out there right now with the way the market's so saturated that they let the leash really long, and a lot of subs run their own thing, meaning run layout, run underlayment. And guys don't even see what's underneath there, and then you put on this material that a client's purchased, and now it's vulnerable to a point where you don't know what's behind that. And then I remember years ago I had a guy do a shower, and the homeowner was like, I'm gonna do the tile, I'm gonna handle the finishes. So I basically prepped everything and didn't do the prep for the shower walls. They put Durarock on, and they put sheetrock screws on it, and then they put marble on it, and then 6 months from there, you could actually see all the rust heads from the screws start kind of glowing from behind.
Rust.
Yeah, and it was like, but that's the example I have in my head of when a homeowner thought he could GC. Who's a friend of mine, did that, and he just let it roll, and he came back. He's like, "What do I do?" I go, "You got to take all of it off, back to the studs." That's the answer. And if you understand that going into it, as a GC or a homeowner or anybody, you'll have a little bit more respect for what has to happen behind the scenes in what you don't normally want to even focus on.
John, how do you think for our role, right, as general contractors, like obviously Tile and Adam, you guys do the install, but for us,
and you guys take pride in it, so there's less worry there that we need to be there.
How do we get like our tile guys to understand that? Like obviously you're talking about you're using leash as a term, but how do we get them to a level where it's like we're helping enforce the need for certification, the need for education, for them to understand it? Obviously, money and price and
resources,
square footage is always an issue.
like resources. Where are they going to find this besides YouTube?
Right.
Like what we're actually installing and how.
But is it
benefits them.
our? I'm going to use responsibility as a word to get them those resources.
Well, yes, I think it is, because like these two guys, Tyler, that you guys take pride in what you do, and you guys know all the methods. And if it's the same for us, like meaning we were joking earlier saying, just do it yourselves. That was both you guys' answer, was just do it yourselves. And it's like, all right,
step back.
I would have to.
That's always Tyler's
Yeah, and I'd
answer.
have to. And that was my mentality for a long time.
Yeah, I was gonna say you just said as soon as you start to let the leash go more, with an economy that's booming, like that's gonna happen, and so it's hard for somebody like Tyler, to stay how he's at right now, especially when the phone keeps ringing and you're like, I don't want to say no.
Yeah.
I've got tons of work right now. Like I could get this guy over here and this guy, and then all of a sudden, what starts to happen?
Quality drops.
Because I just don't sleep at night.
Yeah, same here.
But there's a lot of guys who have no issue with that. They get a paycheck.
Yeah.
And that's just not important to them.
Right.
So I think, I don't know, even as far as like, have you guys ever asked if your tile setters are using the Schluter products? Have they been to the training?
Yeah, so I always talk about Mike, who does my tile, and when he first started, it was all speed. He did like a B+ job, but he was so fast, and it worked.
Scary.
It was scary how fast. But
Those usually don't go hand in hand.
no, and he was good. He was good, but he had this mentality that in his market it was all speed driven, square foot driven, and all. And
That is the
else.
mentality a lot of people feel.
Right. And for the last, I'm trying to remember, probably 4 years, I've sat with him on every single job. It's like, I'm going to, John, you and I have talked about, I'm going to micromanage this, and I'm going to sit on the job, and I'm going to, I want to walk through the process. This is what I've learned.
But during that process, you then jumped off of using that tile guy, and he was great. You trusted him.
I did.
The quality. And then you found out that it isn't always better with a bigger company that says that they pride themselves in quality.
Right. And that was it hurt. Like I lost a lot of sleep on that job because I had to rip stuff out. And I went back to this guy, Mike, and I'm like, Mike, I don't know, like, is it financial? Like, can I pay you more? Like, I need your speed to slow down so we can hit the details that I know you're capable of doing. And that, over the last 4 years, that's exactly what he did. He's like, if I'm making more money, then I can go slower. And I can take the time to educate. And now it's like every job we go on, I spend 2-3 hours with him talking about a crazy idea, the way the curbless shower is going to work. Hey, check out this product. Does this make sense? And letting him, have fun and enjoy what he does again, where it's not get this done as fast as you can. It's get this done to the best of your ability.
Wow,
Nick,
it's funny. That is great.
It's funny because, I'll have painters come over and be like, hey, are you done yet? And then my answer is always, you can't rush art.
And they just walk away.
It's refreshing, Nick, to hear you say that, because what you're talking about is a different business model.
It's super hard.
You were actually introducing to this tile setter a different business model than the one that he had in his head, which
Right.
was
And the one
get
he's
her
used
done,
to.
get to the next one,
Right.
get paid, get that type of thing. And here you're saying, no, wait a minute. If you slow down and did better quality work,
Right.
you can get paid for
Because
that.
my job as a GC is to sell value in what we do. So if I'm promoting that our value is the highest, then I need to allow everyone that's underneath that to be able to put the highest amount of value into their work individually. And it's the most difficult. I talk about it all the time that in our industry, everything is so schedule driven. And if I could just eliminate schedule from a conversation and just let us do the job to the best of our ability, and then when it's done, it's yours.
You
Like,
know,
it would be
sounds
amazing.
nice.
My GCs used to tease me and say, are you still here doing this tile work? And I'd say, it's going to be here a lot longer. It's going to take me that extra couple of days to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
This will be here a long time. It's going to be worth it. They were teasing because they appreciated the quality. That's what they wanted. But it's so rare to find a GC that isn't like, sharpen your pencil on this next one. I'm going to let you bid on this job. And boy, you're going to have to do a little bit better
You need
on
to
the.
pull out
On,
like one shower
wow.
and you reevaluate your approach.
Right.
I mean, it's all
That's
it
a good
takes.
point, Jeff.
That's all
Oh,
it
yeah.
takes is that
Yeah.
that I think part of that. Todd, I think you had a comment, but I think if the way you communicate with a client, where you basically shut your phone off and you devote all that time to that client during that meeting, that's what you have to do individually with each trade.
Yeah.
Like my framer is not the best framer, but I bring to the table what his weaknesses are, where I can basically fill in and help him sort through those. Same with like I'm gonna throw the Marvin thing. We were talking about it last night. Is that Marvin? I read the directions with him. I meet with him and do that instead of saying, "Hey, here's the paperwork. Here's this.
Right.
I'll come back in 2 hours. Make sure that's set." It's going, "Hey, no. Do you know if you take a picture of that SKU on that direction, it'll show you a video?" Like that way we can go through it and go. And I'm not looking at the directions. I'm looking at him going, "What are you bailing on? Like, where
Yeah.
do you stop concentrating?" And like that's the problem.
I think that's a good point. It's like you know, no one is the best, right? Everyone has a weakness, and the fact that like if you can work with them through those weaknesses, John, like you said, like the framer, myself with the tile guy, it's like if you can work with those guys and help them in their weakness, then they can then what they're good at is even better.
But then it's also showing them what the finished product was. You guys talked about getting tile there. I wish I was that far ahead of the schedule there, but it's not. But like I'll get renderings and put those up in the spaces, so you're not just doing an A to B task anymore. You actually
You're
see
thinking
Z
about it, yeah.
in the horizon and going, "Oh, I want to be a part of that." And that's really what we're trying to get to, is that it's about the culture of the job site, where you want to put in an extra effort and you want to, hey, raise your hand and shoot me a text. That's probably the thing I say the most on a job site is, hey, anything comes up, shoot me a text.
Right.
Like I have guys that say, I'm always around. Like that's the, even though I'm not, I can always be around. That's the goal, is that I know I bounce around, but if you ever need me, text me instead of just assuming something and running down that road.
Well, don't you hate getting on the job site and they're like, and you see something and they're like, dude, I didn't want to bother you. I know how busy you are. I tell her, I'm like, I don't care how busy I am. Like, I'm gonna rip that off the wall.
Yeah.
Because and I would have just rathered a quick conversation. I could have walked you through it. And it's like, that's why, I mean, yours, mine, like, that's why our phone rings all the time. And like Tyler and Adam, like.
Is that right, Tyler? Nick will rip it right off the wall, huh?
Yeah, he actually is one of the few GCs I know that will actually rip stuff out if it's not right and just be like, most are just like, oh, we'll get on the next one.
Yeah.
He does. That's why he also doesn't make any money.
Right. I was going to say, that's also why, yeah. Exactly.
I want to talk something a little more specific, if you don't mind, between Adam and Andrew. Adam, you're using a PVC liner for your pans?
Sometimes. Sometimes it'll be, it just depends on whatever the GC has, really.
I mean, are you using topical on top of your dry pack? Or are you generally setting like a PVC liner that's clamping into a flange drain?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so you're doing a
normally the
pre-pitch
case.
and then a PVC liner and then a additional mortar bed on top of that.
Right.
Okay, so one thing that I've always liked, so when I started doing tile, I didn't have any tile background. The first mud bed I ever saw was the one that I did. So I initially started with the Schluter-Systems, and what I always liked about it, because I knew how to do a traditional mud bed with like a PVC liner, but I didn't know how to kind of deal with my plumber and pre-pitch and everything else. And something that I've ran into on, I would say, every single shower that I've demoed is there's no pre-pitch. So they're putting a liner flat on the floor because the plumber doesn't know how to pre-pitch, and I've spoke to a plumbing inspector. Oh, you don't need a pre-pitch under there. So like any one that I've demoed, there's a liner on the floor, and then there's the mud bed and the drain assembly and everything else. And one thing I've always liked about the Schluter system is it cuts that out, because now you don't, are you setting your liner, or is your plumber setting your liner?
My plumber usually does. I usually just walk in and it's already ready for me to go, which sometimes that could be a problem because, based on layout, it's like that drain should have been over just a little bit. Yeah.
So that's what's always been nice about using the Schluter system. One, the tile contractor is dictating layout. You can come in and say, hey, this is about where I want my drain. There is some adjustability, but also I don't need to make sure that I get out there and do a pre-pitch and then have my plumber put the liner on top of that and then put your secondary mud bed.
Can I ask a technical question?
Yeah.
So I've never dealt with a mud bed. What's the benefit of having a pre-pitch with a liner and then a topping slab versus having the waterproofing on top of that?
Go ahead.
What?
It's just two different approaches. One's called is the traditional, which is nicknamed water in, water out, because the mortar that the tile's bonded to is inside the pan liner. So that's actually designed to take on a certain amount of water, because the pan liner's there to confine it to that area, dictated by where the pan liner is. And then there's secondary drainage in that clamping ring assembly called weep holes down at the drain.
Yeah.
And that's what manages the water that gets into the system to get back out. So that's why it's called water in, water out.
So if ever water was to get past the mud bed,
Yep.
you still have that pitch to get to the weep holes.
I know, but why aren't you?
So that's one approach. The second
Sure.
approach is a sealed system, which is what Schluter is with our Curdy system, where we've moved the pan liner, in essence, is no
Sure.
longer a pan liner. The waterproofing is now not under the mortar bed.
Right.
It's on top of the mortar bed, and then you bond the tile directly to that membrane.
So it's not like a
There
it's
was
sealed.
The initial system. There was no way to get a topical waterproofing on top of your mud bed, integrate it into the drain. So the original system was pre-pitch, liner. So whatever water gets through the tile
and
and
pre-pitch
the thin
is
set-
mud, right?
Yeah.
So dry pack
Or something,
liner.
yeah,
Yeah.
usually
You
dry
could-
pack.
yeah.
I mean, you could taper it with wood or whatever.
Sure.
It's just like if the
It
tile
does,
guy's there. Yeah. But like the whole reason is so that goes in there. Once it gets through the tile and the mortar and the thin set, grout, everything else, it then hits the liner and then it hits the weep holes. But if a guy doesn't put rocks around the weep holes and the dry pack clogs them up, now you don't have, if there's no pre-pitch, now the water that goes through the mud bed sits on the floor, can never get to the drain.
It always goes to the corners.
Yeah, so like the
Always,
reason why
right.
I found that the Schluter product is a really good idea is because the water doesn't ever get into the mud bed. Everything's pitched. There's one single mud bed, it's pitched, and then the drain flange and the waterproofing is all integrated. So it never gets, so it almost alleviates the drain, the weep holes getting clogged up, the plumber wanting to get things done, or the building wanting to get things done and having the liner come in, or having somebody working on top of a liner that it gets pierced. I feel like it resolves a lot of potential issues.
Yeah.
Especially when there's other trades involved. If Adam's there, he's probably the control thing. There's not all these trades involved. Even I'm doing a tile shower now where it's going to be a Schluter, it's a dry pack pan and then it's a Schluter drain. I don't have any of the membrane over the dry pack while I'm setting tile in the entire shower.
Because you don't want to.
I don't want to walk on
Yeah.
it. I don't want to pierce.
But ultimately, you are doing.
I'm going to,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'll tie it into the walls. But like that's something where if you're not controlling that whole process,
Yeah.
somebody's coming in, prepping all that, and then tiles getting on. You have to make sure that somebody. So there's pros and cons, but that is one thing that I've always liked
Gotcha.
about that you're not depending on pre-pitch, weep holes, and if there's other trades involved, that you're kind of alleviating yourselves of those issues.
Tyler,
I do like that.
we are aware of that at Schluter, and we know that the number one thing that's omitted from a traditional water in, water out tile assembly in a shower is the pre-pitch. The pan liner's laying flat on the floor,
Well, don't you
and
think
we're
that was back in the
trying to
day,
get to
copper?
that. What's that?
I feel like back in the day when I first started, it was always a copper pan
Copper
that was
was-
put in, and no one pitched that.
Isn't that amazing?
Back when I was
Yeah,
doing
I
it,
did one.
there was no.
It was just flat on the floor.
We used to order them all up, and they'd come square as you can be.
So they should have been pitched.
Well, it's in the Uniform Plumbing Code that there's a pitch required to the pan
like
liner.
8-inch flanges coming
Yeah.
up.
It's funny how
It
some
is, so
states, they can choose what parts of the Uniform Plumbing Code they're going to adopt or not. And sometimes it's even down to the county level what they choose to adopt or not. So sometimes, like Tyler was saying, this plumbing inspector or the building inspector came out and said, yeah, there doesn't need, as long as it's not leaking. It's like,
Right.
oh, wait a minute. If it doesn't have a pitch, it's not going to work as the original design intended it to.
Do you want to hear
It's
some?
that important. So that's the number one thing that's omitted. So yeah, our trays, our foam trays that have the Curdy on them already, pitch perfectly towards the drain. Or you can take our drain and set it like you did. You're going to screed off of our drain flange as your low spot up to your high spot around your perimeter, which is dead water level, right?
Yep.
Because that's one of the beauties of working with mortar is you're in total control. And then you're going to cover it later with Curdy and have a sealed system, and it's going to be great. So that is a big issue we're dealing with in the industry right now, is educating people. And even at our own workshop where we're, about Schluter, we still go through the traditional assembly and say, this is how it works. Here it is in the handbook, and let's look at each individual component and what role it plays to make the thing work as its original design intended.
Right.
And what happens if we leave one of those out? Like you said, we don't put crushed tile or stones or pebbles or spacers around the weep holes to keep from being clogged with the mortar when we pack the mortar. What's going to happen? Well, then it isn't going to drain right. What if the pan's laying flat on the floor? What's going to happen? Well, the mortar bed's going to get totally saturated. There's no gravity there to make the water get down to the secondaries. So we go through those things. If you're putting backer board on the walls, how far can you nail the backer board onto the curb? Well, no, you just put holes in your pan liner. Can you nail the backer board any lower than 3 inches above finished height of the curb? Well, it's dictated right in the handbook. You can't because, well, that's how high they want you to expend the pan liner. In other words, don't poke any holes in the pan liner. So we do go through all of these things in the workshop because it's important that they know, again, the history, why it was done properly, why what they're doing in a lot of cases is kind of improper.
Right.
It's funny when we get done with that segment at the workshop. You've been, Tyler, to workshop, and I think, John, you said you had, or Nick?
I have not, but my guys have.
Oh, your guys have?
Yeah.
And then Adam, you said you probably came to the one in like Anaheim or something where we hold them out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A few times.
Yeah, so you've heard the drill out there.
Oh, yeah.
After that segment, people start coming up to the presenter up front, and we're having a little confessional now. How important is it to have the
how long is it going to last? If I didn't, say hypothetically, if I didn't.
I saw a guy that didn't do it.
Saw this guy.
Yeah, I know this guy that did this once. Yeah.
If you want to hear something crazy, the conversation I had with that plumbing inspector, I was using Schluter shower system with the membrane on the walls and everything. And it's the first township that had required me to do a flood test of the pan. So I had the membrane in because it was a small enough shower pan, like not a crazy pitch that I'd be damaging it. So I did the flood test on the pan. I said to him, do you run in, are you guys inspecting pre-pitch? Because I feel like that's when you'd want to come out and inspect. Like, yeah, it is nice to flood test your pan. But I said, if you're making people flood test a pan and there's no pre-pitch, you're now having them flood this pan. And there's water that's now soaked into this pan that can never get out. So you're starting rot day one. And he's like, well, you don't need a pre-pitch under your liner. And I was in the middle of trying to get an inspection, so I wasn't going to be like, argue? You're wrong. But I started asking him these questions. He said, no, if the tile fails, it's because the tile guy didn't do a good job. And, he doesn't have his... he didn't set his pack his pan tight enough or whatever it may be. And this is the plumbing inspector for a very big township around me. And if that's the general consensus, like which somebody who's in the industry is and you're having people flood test pans that are now soaked with water that can hopefully dry back out, but like that's crazy to me that the amount, the lack of knowledge out there within the industry, that I feel like that's pretty typical. Like Andrew just said, people coming up after the fact realizing that they never pre-pitch. They never even heard of pre-pitch, or that you need a primary and secondary mud bed when you're doing a traditional liner.
So Nick, do you find that after copper pans kind of phased out because you put them in when the plumbing inspection was, and there's so many trades that go in after you, they just... the worry and the accuracy of keeping those things waterproof went away. So everyone went to, I feel like, I don't know the time frame on this timeline better, but that went away. And then zero clearance showers were basically ADA. And in Massachusetts, you almost couldn't do them because you couldn't get that water test done.
Right.
So it had to be an ADA kind of bathroom in order to get the zero clearance. Since that code has changed, we get our boarders in there, and they don't board the showers. They leave them off, and there's no pan. I lay out the way the drain goes for the plumbers, all in Sharpie. They put it in, so everything's good. Like the bench is already drawn in Sharpie. Everything's kind of laid out. And then the tile guy is responsible for the pan, the drain, everything that's there, and installing the board, because that's who, in general, is responsible for this part of the program. So I don't want to have that pan in and then it goes, oh, that's on the plumber.
Right.
And that's what happens. So I'm eliminating. I guess I'm asking you. I haven't looked that closely on how your system works. What I find is that no one's checking that at all. It's up to us. Our tile guy is doing his membrane, attaching all that. Then he's doing the test, and it's for no one else but for ourselves.
Right.
In our area. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I think, right now the biggest disconnect we have is that, so we do a lot of linear drains and a lot of curbless showers, and we're using the Schluter liner and their drain. And the biggest disconnect that I have is the drain connection. Who makes that drain connection? It should be the plumber. The plumber's done. He stubs up, leaves it unglued. I band clamp it to my linear drain. I glue it and I push it down. And that's a connection that's made, and like you never see it. And that's like the biggest worry I have is that, did he prime it? Did he put the right glue on it? Like that went into the floor, it's glued in there, it's done. Is it going to leak? But from our yes, the same thing. We don't board it. The tile guy comes in, and I'm like, if the walls aren't flat, tell me, because I'll have someone over here right now. Like they were supposed to be here all last week, making sure every one of these were level and they were all planar. And if they're not,
but then you turn the heat on, and then like a week later, it's like.
Right, and then I'm like, guys, go back over there. Bring your planer, bring some shims, like get those walls flat. I love the idea of the thin set on the stud.
Yeah.
That's going to be in the back of my mind. So when he says, "Oh yeah, no, I got an idea. I'm going to show you how."
That's the way to elevate your game.
You must have to do like a speed set or something, right? I mean, if you're wanting it to harden, though, like I was just thinking about that. If you don't, then actually you'd have to wait till the next day.
It actually kicks
like
off. It kicks off and gets enough body. The thin set
just
does.
enough to screw in.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a foam core, so we have a screw and a washer, and you have to crush those into the foam a little bit so that when you hit them with your trowel, you're not
smooth,
clicking over them, right? So it will just set a little bit, and you'd be surprised how soon after wet shimming you can actually get on that stuff. That thin set does. It just kicks off enough to get enough body that you don't squish all the work you just did, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's your concern.
Well, because my whole thing too, obviously every tile guy is always thinking time. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, prep day, tile, couple days, whatever the case. So that was just my immediate thought. It's like I have to move somewhere else too. Yeah.
Look, it's a really nice technique, but it's only going to go so far in getting as a replacement for a mortar bed, let's say.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, totally.
We were saying this before we started, that there's so many guys that came out of the trades that now work at Schluter. Not only me, a bunch of us, and we will all say, look, no one's going to dispute that a mud job is really nice.
No, I love the idea of it and the idea of like production. Like my thought immediately when I first started seeing the foam boards and things like that, I was like, I could see this so good for like a bigger tile company doing big commercial jobs and just knocking a bunch of walls out, a bunch of, like boom, boom, boom. You'd be killing it. I can't imagine having to, do mud bed on
Funny, that's how you thought, but I thought that takes an apprentice. It gives him the ability to jumpstart his career without any compromise. In the back of my head.
Or at least the thought in his mind that he could.
That it's like, all right, but letting him know that this is why it goes in and what has to happen, why it's pitched. Yeah. It's almost like a show and tell. It's already pre-pitched, so they're not faking it with a membrane and that where they, in my eyes, there's a lot of stuff that I'm very
Well, John,
against.
I think it's like the Kevin O'Connor episode when it's like you're talking about the sheathing, the 1x8 sheathing. It's not that I want to use that. It's that you should understand what it was doing. And now I'm using a zip system. But what was the reasoning for the 45? All of that, and it's the same thing here. It's like, you could still use mud, but you don't have to. But at least understand what, the approach. And being able, like you guys talk about education, you guys are talking all the way. Hey, let's start with, square one. I don't know if it was you guys. I think someone had compared the Dietra, the uncoupling membrane, to the pyramids and how they would set these large stones with a sand layer, and it was and that fleece backing is like the sand layer, and bringing it all the way back to thousands of years ago. But starting there and like walking through the process and like how we got here and the reason we got here and the reason all of these things still work to this day. That's like the most important thing, I think, in our industry, everyone's industry.
If you're going to master anything, right?
You need to start
think
from-
about the term
Yeah.
master. I have mastered my trade, right? That takes a while.
Yeah.
And you do need to understand the history
Right.
that's behind whatever profession you are in, and you want to become a master in. So yeah, start way back at the beginning. Why did we set tile the way we did?
Right.
What were the benefits? What were some of the problems we had through the ages? How about bond coat? When you get to the different types of bond coats you can use for tile through the ages, you really need to start at the beginning and go, what did we use before Portland cement? What was that bond coat? This is mystery, but let's explore at least what the values were. What were the goals and objectives? Well, we needed to bond the tile to substrate, right? And let's move forward and let's introduce the technological advancements and why they were made and what the benefit was. And then let's take a chronological history. Let's take a little tour. It won't take but 15 minutes. 15 minutes of your time.
Right.
And then you can understand all that, and then you can master your profession. You can master your installation, right?
I love when you're demoing like a super old house and you're seeing the horsehair in like, in the plaster and stuff for fracture proof. It's like, that was genius,
Right. Yeah.
How amazing
all
is
this
that?
is the time that they put into it was like,
I don't
nail
even
up
care
every
about
one
the
piece.
towel. I'm like breaking it off going, what did they do back in the 1800s?
Think
Like,
about
that's
it now.
amazing.
If you had to tell somebody that you got to put lath up and nail each piece of lath that's an inch and a half wide, 2 nails on each end of it and on each stud.
I think people forget that stuff was installed by hand.
By hand.
Because there's thousands of
Insane.
nails.
It takes so
Almost no
long just
splits.
to pull it out, let alone put it in.
No joke.
Yeah, I guess there were actually people that were like lathers.
Yeah.
They just went around and worked with that rough sawn
Specific, huh?
Crazy.
wood lath and just, can you
Rock
imagine?
and roll.
Insane.
That's what you have an apprentice for.
Yeah, exactly. Go.
I have a technical question, Andrew. How long you guys now have your own proprietary unmodified thin sets, correct?
And modified, yep.
Okay. When I know that a big downside that a lot of people had with initially using your systems is the generally using the unmodified thin sets with them because of the waterproofing and everything else, and ensuring that people modified thin sets are so prominent now that it's hard to find high quality unmodified. If people are going to a box store, the only unmodified thin set is garbage.
Dirt in a bag.
Yeah, so was it always your plan to come out with these thin sets? Did you always have them out when you released your product? Is it something you're still developing?
We really didn't want to get into the thin set business. I'll be honest with you. We were sort of forced into it because of the conditions in the industry. Certainly the industry was going towards modified thin sets because 2 things were happening. The tiles were getting denser, which means they were absorbing very little water at a very slow rate. And the substrates we were bonding them to were very, very thirsty.
So
Concrete slab, backer boards were very thirsty. So you needed a modified thin set to increase the wet time of the bond coat. So the industry was going in that direction. And then it was Schluter that had to come along and go, oh, wait a minute. What if you're over an impervious membrane? What if the the surface you're bonding your tile to doesn't soak up any water at all?
So if
that's going to be an issue now.
So listeners know, or Nick, John, a modified thin cement and thin sets gain their strength by retaining water, just like concrete.
Right.
So the modified thin sets retain water better. So they're meant to hold the water longer, correct? So that it cures stronger.
That's right.
Okay.
And that was one of the key benefits of introducing a latex, a polymer, an acrylic, whatever you want to call it, that becomes modified thin set. In there was to increase the wet time. There's some other qualities, but truly it was to keep the water in the Portland. So Portland, we all understand, the longer Portland cures, as you just said, Tyler, the stronger and harder it is, and that was key. So that's what it was there for. And then we came along and said, maybe we should rethink this a little bit and see how it's not the latex doing the sticking, it's the latex affording the Portland a longer wet time. Mm-hmm. So if you already have a longer wet time with an impervious membrane like Curdy or Dietra or something like that, then maybe we should take a look and see is it really necessary to have the latex? And all it was doing for us was prolonging the wet time and keeping people off of a floor for a couple of days after setting it, and we know that that's not the time frame that they want them. So when we developed our own thin sets, we did it because we really wanted to have a full system and kind of limit the confusion and really say, look, it wasn't that modified thin sets don't work. We never said that. They're great quality product. Everybody understands that. But in our context, they're probably not the best bet, the best choice that you could make based on time. And that time factor. You can't set a floor and then tell the homeowners, yeah, just stay off the floor for a couple of days, I'll be back.
Before we grout.
Right, before we grout. So we're like, really, what the tile contractor wants is about a 12 to 15 hour time where they'll let the thing set and then they can safely walk on
I always thought it was just next day. Whenever you get tile done, next day.
How long have you seen those Tyler on the back of a bag? It says, allow 24 hours. Right. And then you're like, well, today's Tuesday, and then it's 4:30, and I'll be back tomorrow morning, but that's Wednesday. So, 24 hours to a tile setter is the next calendar day.
Yeah, next day. That's
always
24.
So,
It's funny because when I first started using your products, which you probably know, the forum and person who was advocating for it, there wasn't a good it was tough to find a good
I wanted to
quality
speak to that. Yeah.
good quality unmodified thin set if you didn't know where you were going. So he would actually recommend using a crap box store modified thin set because it was such garbage that like it only had a little bit of modifier in it, that basically it was a decent unmodified thin set.
I've had that conversation with that gentleman many times.
And you've sent me a screenshot of which one to use.
I mean, it voids their warranty and everything else, but like it's such junk thin set that like this is basically a quality unmodified thin set.
Yeah, I remember having
voids
that.
it?
Well, you guys want to use an unmodified thin set or one of your proprietary?
Like you guys,
we're a company of tile setters, and I want to just assure you that we don't walk away on technicalities like that.
I know a guy.
I mean, take for instance, somebody does use one of those thin sets that we don't recommend, and they have a problem with a job. Well, if we come out and find that using the wrong thin set wasn't the key issue, wasn't the problem, we're still not going to walk away on a technicality. We're going to say, well, by the way, that wasn't right, but that's not what the issue is here.
Gotcha.
But we do find in many cases the answer is, it would void the warranty, but we're a bunch of tile setters. When there's a problem, we need to get the problem fixed. We'll point fingers later. We'll use this as an opportunity for education and say, this is why we didn't want that. So it's funny that fellow that said that. I've had several conversations where he said, there's just a little latex in that, Andy. Right. You don't have to worry about it. And I said, let me tell you something. I won't say his name. I'll say, I cooked you a batch of brownies here, and I hope you enjoy them, but there's just a little bit of dog dew in here. But you can't even detect it. It's not that much. And we'd always have a good chuckle about that. But I said, do you see my point? We really should try. But you're right. It was very difficult to find a good quality thin set on a market, and certainly at a big box store was the worst, that didn't have latex in it, because that's not where the whole industry was. So we did make a big effort, and we actually licensed other manufacturers and still have.
Yep.
But
you can now go into the box stores and get something that works with.
It's better now.
But it's I guess going from the workability of a modified, and then guys going and trying to just go to an unmodified or low quality unmodified.
Low quality non-modified.
It's that's what I think was even just the workability of like this isn't going to work.
Yeah,
like this isn't right. Yeah,
it's no fun. And we if you spend any time with a trowel in your hand, you can tell as soon as you start spreading, you're like, oh no. Yeah. This is not going to be good. And the lower grades were like that. They weren't creamy. They didn't trowel nice. You just didn't feel like, oh, this is gritty. It was the sand granule size. It was the ratio of Portland to the fillers. It was, how much cellulose ether, which is a water retention agent, methylcellulose they put in there, how much is in there in ratio to the other stuff. There's a lot of chemistry that comes into play, but when it comes to a tile setter, they don't need to know the chemistry. They just mix it up and start troweling. They're like, nope, this ain't going to do. So that was the problem, Tyler, trying to find a good one that the installer liked. So they are better now. You can get them out there. And it was interesting when we started licensing other manufacturers to make something that met a certain formula. They didn't have to tell us their formula exactly, But we just said, make certain it has at least this much of these components in it, because we know that's going to be a good thin set. And we'd license them. They could use our name, put it on the bag, even say the name of our product, Ditra. That was fine, because we wanted it out on the industry. And what occurred from that is these thin set companies at first said, there's really no money in that stuff. I mean, it costs more to ship it than we're going to make in profit on it. So then they realized they could market it as a quality, a premium, non-modified, charge enough to make a little bit of a profit, and then it's more readily
and
available.
that peace of mind is there. Like, if you can walk in and there's the name Ditra on the bag, and like you flip it over and it works with Curdy, and like you don't have to worry about it. The warranty's there. You know that it's going to work, that it's going to be a higher quality, and I think that especially for people getting into this and working with the systems and learning about that, like even when I started it, there weren't those out. So it was trying to find, it went with an unmodified. This is terrible. Let's look into another route. Go with a really terrible modified that was, and now there's these systems where I can go in and be like, okay, yeah, this works. Like, I know it works. And it's that peace of mind where it's like, I don't have to worry I'm using something or I'm eating something with a little dog poop in it, Like, you're able to sleep at night.
Well,
Totally.
Tyler, you and Adam both brought up, laying awake at night worrying about something. You don't want to introduce any of those if you don't have to, right? You want to limit those.
So to that
would be one more thing.
So to laying awake at night and stressing about it, I want to dig into you.
Oh no.
Yeah, like hard. No,
Hard.
but see, Andy's checking out. He's got some classes to train.
Yeah, I have to do a demonstration on our stage here
Awesome.
for about 35, 40 minutes. So I'm going to go do that. But
Well,
it's been a lot of fun, gentlemen.
This was
Yeah, well,
awesome.
thanks for
man.
Likewise.
coming.
Appreciate you giving us
Thanks
a
for
little
your
space.
knowledge.
Okay.
Again,
That was
Andy
awesome.
with Schluter,
What's the
Education
booth? Do you still remember the booth?
N1139.
Wow, you were
IBS
good.
Wow.
2019.
Be there,
he
be
is
square.
all of North America Education.
Director of Education.
Director of Education. I butchered that, but I did
That's
all right.
good enough.
You did great
We
with
got the
booth.
booth number. Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Thanks for all
So-
the insight and
Yes,
spending
thank you
the
so
morning
much.
with us.
All right. Well, thanks for coming by. It's been
Yep.
fun having you here.
Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
So Adam.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I'm ready.
Are you? Because I'm going to ask a few questions, but Johnny's going to ask the hard ones.
What?
No, but all right. So you and Tyler, I feel, are maybe brothers.
Seriously.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
maybe.
Hold on.
Seriously.
Do you guys want to get in a chair?
Insane.
John's sitting on buckets. Schluter buckets.
Fine.
I want to understand, like, and Tyler talks about it all the time, but like, why stay small? Why focus? Like, why is it just you? Because you don't have a helper, right?
I have a helper sometimes.
Okay.
I actually, so about it was a couple years ago,
Yeah.
I had a helper come on full time, payroll, the whole nine, right? And I did my numbers. I just told all my builders I have to charge a little more because I got this guy, yada yada. Of course, my builders are going, feeling uncomfortable and stuff. But literally, at the end of 2 years of having an employee, I was tripping at how much it cost for me to have an employee. I mean, I'm already small anyways to begin with, so to try to do that, and yeah, it's just.
What was the burden that was the impact?
So a lot of it is just the at-home stuff. I mean, my wife helps me a lot with my finances and with running the business, because I feel like I'm just a worker guy. Like, I don't want to have to, like, I hate having
You're
to come
creative.
home, do all this paperwork. And so to add on having to deal with all of that stuff was tough for both of us, because I was like, honey, I need help.
Yeah.
But it's just, it was hard for me. And so I could actually take my time when I'm by myself, get the job done right, and not have all this other stuff that I'm stressed about. Because again, I'm already stressed. I don't need to be more stressed out.
One of your kids will be old enough soon.
Yeah.
It's like free labor.
So where's that stress coming from?
That's exactly what I'm thinking.
Well, that's like what's driving that? Like, why are you? Like, what's driving the stress?
What is driving it? I think it has to do with just like
overall quality, like maintaining a quality, maintaining like
No,
reputation?
I don't think it has anything to do with like my work.
Okay.
My work is there. I go, 8 hours a day. Like I'm doing my thing. Everyone knows what
You're in
I'm
your happy
doing.
spot.
I'm in my zone,
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
I'm like seriously, when I go to work, I'm stoked because for me, it's like an outlet. Like for me, it's what's that word? I don't know, but it's what am I thinking? I'm drawing a blank. I go home and there's a lot going on, right? And so there's craziness going on.
So
for work, so for when I'm at work, my wife's always like, it must be nice, like you're leaving, and
I'm
it's
glad
like
we all get that.
No, it's just a time in my life,
Right.
really. I mean, I'm gonna look back, and when the kids are out of the house, I'm gonna have a whole different outlook.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a different answer for you, even. You know what I mean? But presently, it's tough, and so me going to work, I'm just like in my zone. Leave me alone. Put on a podcast or music. I'm going to town. Leave me alone. But then, having a helper is huge because I'm not having to get out of my spot.
Right.
And go run cuts, go mix thin set, go. There's so much stuff that it's so nice to have a helper. So right now I'm kind of like in between.
So, but you said work isn't your stress. So when you leave work, when does that hit you?
The stress part?
Yeah, like when you're like, is it like you're like, I gotta go home, I gotta help with this, and
it's
this.
always, well, because that's just it. Is like I'm not good with. I guess I would say my weakness is all the other stuff, the scheduling, the appointments.
Does that impact your work-life balance?
No, I don't think so. To be completely honest,
Are you home and you shut off work?
I could get home and completely shut off. I'm very thankful for that.
And do you think that has a lot? Like, is that part of the reason why you don't have other people working? Because if you didn't, then you would feel as though you would go home and think about, I got payroll.
100%.
Yeah.
Can I turn this up a little bit more? It's hard to hear you guys for some reason. I think it went down.
It's funny for me. I feel like we probably have a lot in common with like personality types and everything else. When my life seems extremely overwhelming, it's when I can't control my work. Like I feel like my whole life is always just out of control with, my anxiety, my mental health, all of that stuff. I've always been able to control my work and control the outcome. And like when I go to
the other stuff.
Yeah, when I go to work, I know that I have complete control and that no matter how a mess my life seems, that like I can control this product.
Exactly.
And that's very good for me. Once I start bringing on more people or more volume and let go of that control, now my entire life seems unmanageable.
I think it's a personality thing because I'm extremely OCD. Okay? And growing up, I mean, to the point, I'm no joke. I had Ninja Turtles and I'd have them all set up in certain, like the way they're laying and stuff. And I'd have friends come over. They'd play with my Ninja Turtles. Guess what? When they left, I set them all up exactly the way I wanted them. And just everything, color coordinated. I mean, for me to be tile guy, it makes sense because I could walk in a room and be like, that's out a quarter of an inch right there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just my I'm tweaking out, I'm tripping, So that going back to me being able to like have control.
Yeah.
I go home and there is no control, and it's a lot going on, and I'm just like, okay, here we go, dad mode, everything else going on,
Right.
So yeah, it's one of those things. It's my baby, kind of.
So I think
interesting.
As comfortable as you'd like to talk about it, but a lot of people I feel like are in your position. In the sense that they're small, they're trying to grow, and you obviously, the fact that you have designers like requesting you because you do mud set, like, I don't know if it's how you charge for it, like not necessarily what you charge for it, but like how are you building your business from a financial standpoint?
I mean, for me, it's like it's always been custom high end, like, and so if I don't have custom high end clients, then obviously you got to do what you got to do. So,
Right.
I mean, there's going to be times where they're tough. See, that's just it. Is I came from a background of tile construction work. I've seen when I was a little kid, my dad have to deal with the recession in '92 and going from we have boats and dirt bikes to now I have to collect cans just to get like Goodwill clothes.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And so like that tripped me out in a sense. When I finally started my business, I was like, I don't want to have to go through those ups and downs.
I feel like
and
a lot
so
of people
if
would...
I could get my name out there enough, if I could connect with the right people, you
With
know,
the right level of people.
at the level that I want, because I already know what level I am at and what I'm capable of doing and achieving. If I could get those people, that's what I want.
I think that's interesting
all I
because a
want.
lot of people would look at their dad and see him like lose the dirt bikes and the boats and say, "I'm never doing that."
I did.
Yeah,
I
but you
did.
I mean,
And just to tell everybody that's listening, like I've done the office job. I've done, you know, the corporate world. I've been there. I wanted to see what else was out there other than construction.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And so as I was going through all that, I was like, this isn't me. This isn't me. I'm gonna
This isn't
bang my
working.
head on the desk, you know.
It's like you're in the office bathroom counting tiles and like looking at stuff. It's like, this is what I want to do.
This is all wrong.
No. But I mean, you know, and that's another thing is, you know, this stigma of like, oh, well, at least you have that for a backup plan.
I hate that.
And I hate
Yeah.
that. And I never want to say
It's like,
that.
get a real job, but if it doesn't work out, you have a backup.
Then you have a backup.
You know,
yeah,
set
and I'm
tile.
Yeah.
like, but that was me my whole life.
Yeah.
And I think that has to do with our generation, our parents' generation, forcing us to go to college, to get that career. And oh, you don't want to be a blue collar. That's for backup and for people that are getting.
How
off
old
the
are you?
I'm 30. I just turned 37.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
But it's still happening. I watched a movie on the flight here, and they said the exact. I almost want to take a
it's still
screenshot
happening.
of it. In the movie, they were like, it was like Instant Family with Mark Wahlberg, and they were like, you know, you're gonna go to
You
school.
would watch a Mark Wahlberg movie.
Dude, he's rad.
It's my point. Goodwill Hunting
Okay,
is like top 5.
Stop, red light. But no, they said it in that movie. They were like, you're gonna go to school whether you want to or not. That's what they said in the movie.
Yeah.
And it's good because you're gonna set you up for the right job. And it was just
Yeah.
like, I watched that and I was like, dude.
That drives me nuts. And then what's happening is obviously we all know parents are having them send off and go in debt, and you've got, you know, $100,000 over your head when you first go out to the real world and find out that you're getting a Starbucks job.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh my gosh,
You know
that's
why?
sad.
You know why it killed me so much about that movie is because in that movie, they flipped houses.
No way.
Yeah, so it was like he's driving an F-100, he's the carpenter, she's the designer, and they still pitched it that way. And I'm like, they was so close to like hitting it on the head, where like they brought the kids to one of the remodels and they gotten into it and they kind of influenced the design. I'm like, they could have so turned that the other way,
Totally.
and they just went with the norm. That's why I was bummed.
Yeah. No, totally.
Great movie though.
Can we just talk about one thing? Mitering tiles.
oh,
We did have
no.
this conversation earlier.
Yeah, why are we having to do that now?
Yeah, like that's. I'm like, I feel like anything that's been done in life, it doesn't matter what it is. You're not the first to think of it. You're not the first to do it. And oftentimes things aren't done because they don't work or it doesn't make that much sense. Like,
It's like you're
You
being
can't-
different. You're trying to be different to be different.
we can't be the first generation that was ever like, hey, we have, how long's tile been around? Like, that we're like, hey, let's try and miter this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What's up with it?
You know, I think it's just trying to avoid using, well, because this is the thing. Anyone that's wanting a miter, they're wanting modern,
Yep.
okay? And so they're wanting hard, clean lines. They don't want to see any trim or anything. So
Why
with-
use tile?
right? Well, that goes to
Solid
that,
surface.
Right.
hey,
Mega
seriously,
slabs.
okay, this is what I'm right now kind of obsessed with is like doing lime plastering. Have
Dude,
you seen this?
We're doing
like
2 bathrooms.
All right.
We started yesterday.
So I'm following
It is
I'm following
amazing.
a bunch of plasters because I consider myself a plaster
Yeah.
mason. I consider myself,
You go to Greece, that's all that's over there.
100%.
It's
100%.
incredible.
You go back there, and you don't have to deal with cracking. You don't have to deal with anything. Why are we obsessed with tile all of a sudden? No, but
really selling yourself, man.
I was just gonna say that. I'm really getting
Maintenance
myself
issues. You have to clean grout.
Exactly. I mean, come on.
The guys are messy.
Exactly. Horrible guys. No, but yeah, I don't know.
I'm just not.
It's pretty weird. I'm not really.
You have to
too
wait another
crazy.
2 years,
I have
Tyler.
many issues. I feel like it gives you an area that's very prone to chipping.
Oh,
it's
100%.
It's a change of plane. So realistically, I'm not sold on epoxy grout. Like, it should be a caulk joint. And how are you going to caulk joint that cleanly? I don't see it as a really good option
you lick your
in
finger.
any case.
Yeah. No, you do need to caulk it. That's definite for sure. But I mean, if you don't have that caulk line nice, it's gonna look like garbage.
Right.
And so you gotta take your time on that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a time consuming
And now you have grout
thing.
joints with the caulk. I know. I don't know, man.
Well, I tell because obviously when I go into bidding a job, I want to know everything, obviously, because what's different, the time, everything, the effort that you're putting into doing a miter is a lot more than if you were to use a Schluter trim.
Right.
Like how much easier is that? So yeah, it's a time consuming thing. So I make sure I charge accordingly, for this. It's like, okay, do you want to really do that still? Okay, then let's do it,
So going back to my question, you're talking about time and charging accordingly. Like, walk me through like how you look at a job. Like, you got this bathroom. What stages is it at? Like, what's your process in like for you? Like, obviously
That
there's
call comes in. How do you vet them?
yeah. Like,
That
how do you
stuff?
vet it? And even to the point where it's like like I'm thinking like we don't do drywall, but I think about like Tyler. You can't get a drywall guy to come hang drywall in a bathroom because there's 5 days worth of work.
Yeah.
But it's an hour a day. Like for you, I mean, yeah, you could prep it all day, but there's like you can't, like a product like Curdy board, you can put the board up and tile the same day.
Right.
You can't do. I don't think you can do that with.
You can.
You can.
But most of the time, I actually do take a couple days for prep.
Right. So
Yes.
walk me through like right from when I'm calling you. Hey, I got this bathroom. I want tiled.
Well, I want to go over there and see what you got, and get square footage and ask what you want, how you want to go about it. Because I could give you a square footage price. I could give you a ref estimate time for T&M.
Mm-hmm.
It all just depends.
Is that the same
you
for?
going-
Sorry.
You go. You've been well behaved.
Is that the same for a repeat client or a new client?
It depends on the client. So if if it's a builder that says, I like square footage, just give me your square footage price. Well, I'll have a rough square footage price for each job, but then obviously there's those things that will change, like a miter or, whatever else they're doing. Oh, I want herringbone.
Is your square footage including prep?
Yes.
Okay.
And so that's just it. So that's where I feel like I am able to charge what I want because of the fact that I have all my material already for what it's going to take. I don't need to go and buy, hundreds of dollars in this stuff and say, oh, by the way, there's this price too.
Right.
I have super cheap sand, like in cement. Like it literally is nothing for my prep. You know what I mean? And
From a material cost.
So that is going right there. You know what I mean? And it's just I like it that way.
You're also
for me.
making money on prep. I tried subbing out tile work, and it was like the guy
Nightmare. I
wanted
could just
to
imagine.
charge the same amount like for mud as he would for I had to buy. Probably shouldn't be throwing that name out there during this podcast. You can put a dog bar, but like that's the system that he wanted to use. And I was like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, one part of your cost is labor, and on these other systems you're saving the money on labor, so your material should be cheaper, right? So you're also making money on the prep, where you're making money on your labor, not on the materials of the prep.
Yeah. Yep.
So, all right. So square foot, like that was actually exactly what I wanted to know, is if it was square footage based, because I feel like I know when I get a proposal from my tile guy, we walk him through everything. Like, he either walks a job if he needs to, he gets the drawings, he gets every tile spec. I give him all the tile layouts, like as much information, and he breaks it down, and he's basically putting numbers to it and then reversing that and showing like that's what it's per square foot, but not saying, hey, this is what it costs to install per square foot. It's basically like he's giving me a number and then dividing it by the square footage,
Yeah.
and it always kind of lands somewhere like in a certain range,
Right.
but it's per job. So, you're looking at, like, are you bidding that hard cost, or are you saying, hey, this is a rough estimate, like we're thinking
This
that
is my range.
this is my range, yeah.
I have, there's the range.
So you're
and
covered for like additional,
Exactly, because that's just it. Is like with tile, it's not framing, it's not drywall, it's not any. You could pretty much name any other trade where you know what you're gonna get into.
Right.
Tile, it's like there's so many different factors.
Well, it's like renovating.
And the more you know about it, the more that's gonna be taking more time.
Right.
Or actually, we can't do it like this, so we're gonna have to build out. We're gonna have to do this. We're gonna have to cut this floor. What do you want to do? Like there's, you could go on and on.
Well,
That's what, I feel like anything that I do, there's so much that goes into it that I feel like my head wants to explode. Like, I'm not kidding. When I left those guys, I was like, you can do 15% of everything that we need done, and the rest I need to be here for. Like, you can't make these decisions, and like you can't. This. I just can't let you do this at
I
this
had
point.
one guy want to work for me, and he's like, I'm really good at doing estimates. So I'm like, you're going to do estimates for me? Like, what are you talking about?
It's really weird that
That's
we're on
so
this side
weird.
of the table,
I know.
and they're on that side of the table,
Right.
And because it's like I understand that, but I don't know if I've been able to let go. Like, I'm still OCD, not like in a humorous way, where like I walk in the Dunkin' Donuts and all the mats are wrong on the floor, and they're not lined up with the tile. And as I walk out, I slowly and discreetly slide my foot,
Kicking it.
so it's straightened as I leave. And I don't know if I've gotten to a point where I feel like I'm always going to get let down on a job, because I used to, when I was younger, I used to set everything myself. I used to do all my own tile, all my own cabinetry, all my own trim, and it got to a point where that was my failure. It was because I held on to so many of those things, and without going to a smaller size project,
Yeah.
I that's part of it, is that I wanted this. I was in love with these houses and building a house and that stuff instead of going to smaller products. And I think part of that is, I'm going on a tangent, but there was a plasterer that I had that lived across the street from me, and he was a one-man show. He'd bring on a helper, and a lot of that reminds me of what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But what I always had a hard time with was, like, he'd go and like board one day, then he'd do his scratch coat at like that next morning, and then go home for lunch or go do an estimate, and then come back and do a coat in the walls. What I didn't understand, what scared me, was that he would be doing an estimate every day. Basically, he would be seeing somebody every day for smaller projects because he had to fill in. Maybe he was 2 months out on work, but he was meeting people to then fill in the next 3 days here, 4 days there, 5 days there, weekend. And that's where I was like, I guess I did the calculation in my head, did the numbers, Tyler, and was like, I figured I would rather have the bigger projects and deal with maybe letting go a little bit, because maybe my standard's high enough that even if it comes down lower, my client's still expecting something that's, down below that.
It's just a different personality type.
I was totally going to say that.
I'm convinced
Everyone's
that
so different.
It is. It's
Except for
not
you
even.
two.
Yeah, well, it's
you're
not
the-
even
You
like
guys are the
what.
ones that are-
It's not what is passable. It's not your standard. It's not anything like that. It's like what makes you happy. I know when I hire somebody who comes onto a job and I walk in and see something that, like, it's passable, it's fine, it's good, but it's just like I feel like it could be better, and it actually upsets me.
But
Where
is that
it's
ever
like
going to change, though?
no,
Like,
and
it's everything we look at,
I mean-
everywhere, could always be better.
of course, it may change, but I also know that, like, there's aspects of my life that I can't control, and that, like, I feel overwhelm me, and this is one aspect of my life that I know I can control.
Right.
And it makes me a better father. It makes me a better person. It makes me happier in general. And there are downsides to it. And like you said, you can't take on these huge jobs. You're not booked out for as long. You have that anxiety, but it's almost a trade-off. What are you going to be good with?
Yeah.
Are you going to be good with less work being lined up, knowing you're taking on smaller jobs? Your sales are lower, but your profit's higher. And it's kind of finding out, what's going to make you the happiest. Is for me, the anxiety of having multiple employees and wanting to leave or go somewhere and make sure that they can stay busy, or I'm providing for them, or that they're going to do things the way I need them, it's not worth it to me and like my personality type and my well-being to take that on. And I've learned that.
Dude, I 100% agree.
So my question to both you guys is that you can't set tile and you can't do this forever. What's the
Well, and that has to do with keep craft alive and like keeping the next generation to do it,
That's why, I think you need
I
an
love
apprentice.
it. Huh?
You need an apprentice.
Okay. Can I just say it
thought it was
is
gonna go bad.
so hard. People don't like to work with me. I'm telling you.
You seem like an awfully nice
I
guy.
used to say the same thing.
Well, okay. It's weird.
Now look
I
at Tyler.
I feel bad because the fact that you are doing something and it's your baby, and you have somebody coming in, and if you're at all like starting to like let go, okay, like go ahead and make these cuts and put those little tiles in right there. Like it is so hard for me to like, okay, no, that wasn't right, dude, sorry. And then they're like, dang it, or whatever. It's like, I'm like, dude, chill, it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's hard. It's so weird. I think it's tile. Like, what is it that?
Well, like those little things are going to make or break the job. Like you just did everything, and now it's
Exactly.
like
It's
But you
like
ha-
there's
but I
that one
think
little corner right there.
You
that's
guys,
off.
what you're missing is that like, if you don't do it, no one's doing it, and you're in a position that you can't. Like, Tyler has Steve, and he's going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Like same thing when I hire people. I knew it's
There's a
very
learning
hard.
curve.
It's very hard for me to like.
Yeah.
I look at that. I'm like, I can do that better, or I can do that, and you did a
Always.
bad job.
Well, this
But
is
I have to understand that if I don't let them make a mistake, they don't learn, and if they don't
Right.
learn, they don't then teach someone else, and if they don't then teach someone else,
Yeah.
then this dies with me.
yeah.
And that's like looking at it that way. Like, yeah, you're gonna say, hey, that looks like crap. You need to rip that out and do it again. But if you're approaching it with the right like conversation and mentality,
Yeah.
then they're gonna respect. Like, hey, listen, like you're not gonna say, hey, that looks like crap, rip it up. It's like, hey, I know exactly what you did. I made that mistake like 8 years ago. Let
Yeah.
me show you how
But
to
the
do
hardest
this.
part of that is letting them do it to a point where
Right.
you're not losing money, but yet they can sniff it coming next time when they get to that shower or
Let
they get
them
to that
make
tile.
the cut.
So-
Don't stop them
So
mid cut and then say, let me do
here's
it
the
again.
problem. Let's fast forward, and we have somebody that's been doing it with me for 2 years, and now they're like, I could do this later and start another
Happens every
business.
Great. Hopefully they. No, I'm being serious. Like,
No, but then it's like, okay, now I'm back to square one.
but you're not. I genuinely believe that if one of my guys leaves, then we maintain a relationship
Yeah.
and we work together. Maybe I get a job that I can't handle right now and I give it to him.
Right.
And maybe he becomes the next AL Tile Junior.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
like he's doing the same amount of work, and then your clientele comes to you and you can give him a job that he'll do a good job on.
Right.
And your bandwidth increases.
Right.
Like you have to look at it from the positive side. That's the like realistically, people want to be in work for themselves until they work for
Yeah,
themselves.
and they hit the
totally.
stress of you driving home.
and that's just it. It's like I see other tile guys, and they've got 4 dudes that do most of their work, right? And they're just not even having to do much and chilling, And I think to myself, like, how do you find those guys? Like, that's what would be ideal, is to have somebody that does do your quality, that is actually willing to stick around.
Dude,
like, that's hard.
throw it up on your Instagram.
Yeah.
I swear to God, does anyone want to learn how to do a mud bed? Or like just make it, like throw it out
Yeah.
there. I guarantee you that you'll
There's-
have a list of guys that be like, I've been waiting for you to ask.
There's just as
Oh
many
no,
people.
I get DMs a lot.
Right.
I
So
get DMs a
Well,
lot.
there's just as
you're
many
asking
people
the
that don't
question
want to
right there.
Yeah.
They don't want to do the business end of it. That's the
Right.
thing. So it's like
And neither do I.
I know,
Right.
and that's
But you-
common.
Maybe I should work for
Same.
one of you guys. How's that? Just kidding.
Sure.
But here's the thing
I've
is
already
that-
offered you a job.
You have actually.
But here's the thing: is how do you how do you retire on this? That's the other part of it. Was like
Right.
going to school for construction management was able to give me, I don't know if it was the breathing room, but the kind of perspective to go, hey, while I was doing that, I was still on roofs when I was getting married, and I'm like, am I going to be able to do this forever? And a lot of my subs were like 65 and older, and they were still working, and I'm like, is that what we do?
Right.
Do we just keep going? I mean, I feel like I'm always going to work regardless.
Yeah.
But I think I have to have a company in place that can then really.
Well, so that's the funny thing is,
For a
so
while.
my dad, you know, he's 61. He's still throwing up mud, dude. And he doesn't want to let go.
Yeah.
He doesn't. He's like,
But he's on
I'm
his
not,
terms.
I,
Not
oh
'cause he has to
yeah,
make
dude.
money.
He's going in at 10 o'clock with
Yeah.
his coffee and donut and chilling. You know, like I'm watching him just going, what the heck?
It's silly
dude?"
donuts. I'm not allowed that.
And well, but it's like he said, I'm not going to stop till I die, because if I stop, I will die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so but
But
it's
there's a difference
interesting.
on doing that when it's a necessity where you still don't have enough money saved, where you still have to.
Well,
lay
that's
tile.
all right now. What are
Exactly.
we doing right now to work for the point to where I'm 60 and I'm getting to just say, nah, I don't want to do that. Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
What if you were 60 years old and you had 5 guys that were 20 years younger than you that did tile better than you, that worked for you?
I want to see that. Okay, so I have 2 boys. That would be amazing to like see them,
Sure.
you know, I have them come up with me.
Right.
And it be a father-son thing. Like that obviously is a dream. And
Right.
I don't know if that's going to happen, but that would be cool, you know, and they're just killing it,
Right.
you know, but no,
I mean,
yeah, it's-
to answer your question, like I don't know how to retire on that necessarily. Just it's the same thing as you guys probably don't know how to retire on what you're doing right
But it's
now.
on the-
You know,
It's in my thought process.
Yeah, I
every
mean,
week.
totally.
of course, but it's even with the level that it's at now, where it's like I know my capacity. My capacity ever is to have like 1-2 small teams where like I can oversee. You know, if I got hurt right now, I would step back and I would oversee Steve
Right.
handling the bulk of the work, and I would have to then bring somebody on that would be Steve, and I would still have to be there to oversee that. Like that would be my plan at this point, and that's not ideal, but I know how I would get to, and like
I mean, that's just as important, knowing what,
maybe
what your
that
reaction would
maybe
be.
like knock on wood, that's what it would have to take for me to get to that. But like also at the same time with retirement and everything else, it's like that's on the back of our mind, and we're putting money away right now to get to that. But you know, it's the same thing as you guys. It's like when you were in this position, like my costs are way lower than your costs are. You know, his costs and overhead are way lower. So there's also like a safety there where one wrong move doesn't necessarily sink us. Like you guys are on the scale where one accident, one wrong move. John, if you screwed up the roof on the house that you're doing, what's going to happen if you had to rip that off and replace all
lot
of
of
it?
money.
Right?
It's a lot.
Like if I ripped off the metal roof on the one porch that I did, like, okay, like I'm all right with that, you know? So I mean, there's pros and cons
There's
in the
pros and
retirement and
cons.
everything else. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think what we're doing is 100% right. I also don't think what
Yeah.
you guys are doing is 100% right. Right now, it works for me. As
Yeah, I
far
don't-
as like 30,
it's not a right
40,
or wrong.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's, you know,
It's a personality thing.
obviously the retirement thing is like a big thing, but I think, you know, big picture wise, it's like, how do you guys pass this on?
For sure.
And I think you're doing a good job with Steve, and I think you could do a good job with a handful of people.
Dude,
Dude,
Yeah.
for
And it's-
you, I would just have somebody that was just mixing crap
Yeah.
for me all day. Or
Oh, I don't.
cut it.
Yeah, I don't.
And if they get hungry, they ask if they can make a cut.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I hire
That's
people
like
because they
the
want to
or
be
like
hungry.
just-
to
Adam's
more.
like, hell
That's
no,
the
that's my
only
saw.
thing.
No, I'm totally down with that. I mean, it sounds crazy, awesome, obviously, but it's
And like
just,
for me, it was even with Steve, just start him like very low, and the whole thing, like for me, was the anxiety of bringing somebody on and supporting somebody, or if I want to go away. And for me, it was like bring Steve on, pay him nothing, and if I get nothing more, because I didn't know Steve and he had no experience, if I get nothing more than him loading and unloading my tools every day, it's going to cover the cost of him being
Right.
there.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
like
and
everything
you
else in
said
between.
hungry and like what. That's my hard part is to find somebody that wants to work with me, that is as passionate and that does
They're there.
want
considering
to
moving
learn,
out. I'm
like
considering
wants to
moving
learn
out.
it. Like I'm serious.
coming.
Like young kids nowadays, they see the hard work that I do and they are put off. They're like,
Yeah, I know you're generalizing, but I would fight you on that. Like,
really?
yeah,
Like,
I mean, there's two guys here. Two of my guys, and Mike is incredibly passionate about what he does,
Yeah.
and now and then Ken, who's in my shop, incredibly passionate about what he does. I started a cabinet shop in my garage because I wanted to build cabinets for my jobs. He stepped in, and he's leaps and bounds better cabinet maker than I am, than I ever was. And it's
so rad.
But it's those everyone
there.
wants to talk about how kids are lazy, kids don't want to do hard work, and it's a generalized comment. It's not true. It's just that everyone.
You don't live in California.
I'm
No, just
telling you,
kidding. I'm just
I
kidding.
do not.
No, but dude,
But I'm telling you right now, everything is so exposed because because of social media. You see so many more people than you ever did before. That there's just as many lazy people today as there were 50 years ago.
100%.
You're just seeing more of them because
Yep.
you're able to see into way more people's lives. There's just as many hardworking, passionate people for
Yeah.
every one of these industries.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm on the fence on that one because I think back in the day you had to work to make money, and now there's way more technology where you can sit back and not do anything.
Yeah, well,
Wait,
and
Sure,
that's
but that
just,
doesn't mean.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
there.
I mean, there's
those
way more
guys
people out there.
Yeah.
My kids want to be a YouTube star.
Yes.
Like, dude,
still hard work.
what the hell?
There's, but it's
It's
not
a video.
backbreaking. It's
Yeah.
not backbreaking.
But there-
People
but there's
don't
always-
want to work hard, like
There's
physically.
a kid that made
physically.
$21 million last year.
Yeah.
How hard can it be? He's a
That's
kid.
insane.
I'm not saying. I'm not
It wasn't a
fighting
production
that.
team.
But there is you're right though.
His dad
There's so
cut
many other ways to
basketballs
make
in half.
money.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
My point I want to go back to you guys said it's a mentality thing, good and bad. When it comes to this industry, the first couple of years, you're just kind of rolling and pushing and grinding it out, and you're making money to make ends meet. But what happens when people go into the kind of corporate world, they're given a 401k as part of that package. I think that needs to be structured into more deals as owners, as the four of
Yeah.
us own these companies, regardless of employees, is that having a 401k, whether it's dumping in $100 a month,
Right.
Yeah.
that needs to be a standard for everybody because that's a huge perk.
Yeah.
I just did my whole will and testament and all that stuff, and I'm looking at what my assets are and what my wife's assets are, and I'm like, what do I bring to the table again?
Yeah. Other than good looks.
Yeah, but I have a Roth IRA, and it's but what's stopping me from putting a C note into a 401k and getting that
Yeah.
going? If I had done that 10 years ago when I was 29, it's always on the list. Does it ever
Yeah.
get checked
Right.
off? And does it have? It doesn't have
It's
to be
too easy not to do
$40,000. It doesn't need to be 40 grand. It could
Right.
be a little. You know?
right.
That's all I'm saying is that with the retirement thing, it doesn't mean you guys are doing something wrong or we're not. It's more whatever size company you are and structure it is, look into it.
Yeah.
Those companies make it very easy. Fidelity, whatever it is, it's not rocket science to do.
Totally.
So we probably should be wrapping things up, but
We
I just
are.
wanted to kind of reiterate that the worst thing to happen to tile in the past 100 years, you agree, is mitering.
So we're
That's how we're ending it.
we're gonna
Straight
end
from
it
the horse's
right now.
mouth.
Horrible idea. Don't do it. No, not at all. I'm okay with it.
You should pitch yourself then. Where can we find you? What's your business? You have a website?
Yes.
Who's going to hire you?
My handle is at ALE Tile, and I don't really have much of a website or anything.
No.
You guys could find me on that. Pretty
Cool.
much everyone is on Instagram, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
So big thanks
So-
to Schluter-Systems,
Yes.
booth N1139, still
Yep.
remembering it.
Nailed it.
IBS 2019, they sponsored this episode. We will make sure we tag them as well as Adam. Big thank you to you driving out.
Huge thing.
So stoked
This
to
was
be
a
here.
really cool conversation, and
Yeah.
I think we covered a lot
Yeah.
between
I'm happy with it.
Andy and Adam.
Okay,
Good.
Tyler's happy.
Good.
I was happy.
Wrap it up.
That
Time
means
with
we're
it.
all happy.
So you can find us at themodерncraftsman.org, _modern_craftsman on Instagram, info@themoderncraftsman.org for emails. Hit us up on iTunes. We are also on YouTube. All these episodes do get...
Yes, we don't push YouTube
I know
up,
we
and
don't.
you guys can make comments on that platform?
Yeah. So if you guys want to see us act like idiots around a table and record a podcast, check out the YouTube. And we are off to our next booth.
So
Which
exciting.
Which is Marvin.
Yes, it is.
And it is, I'll get the booth number over there.
With this old house.
Yeah, we got
Rich
Trip
Tatui.
Theory, yeah. So,
It's going to be cool.
What time's that?
I think
Now?
an hour and a half.
All right. Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Sounds
Take care.
exciting. I'm excited.
Thanks for listening, guys.